Do you travel around with a bunch of junk in your trunk but hate where you but hate where Jeep stuck the 12-volt receptacle in the rear? Well, watch the rest of the video and I'll show you how I installed an auxiliary 12-volt receptacle in the back and connect it to the factory auxiliary switches in the front of the Jeep. When I was selecting all the options for the new Jeep JL, one thing that I wanted to have for sure was a trailer tow and HD electrical group. That adds the big alternator, bigger battery, your 7-pin plug for the trailer hitch, and most of all the auxiliary switches. And the reason I wanted the auxiliary switches was so that I could have a really nice and tidy way to turn on and off the ARB freezer in the back. There's already a plug in the back that's a DC outlet, but I really don't like the way that's laid out, so let me show you why I don't like that. All right, here you can see the original factory plug. It's got a pretty nice cover over it. For the most part, I like it. What I don't like about it is where it's at. So if you notice that the plug sticks out a few inches here, so one of the things I want to make sure I do is have full access to all the storage for sliding stuff in and out, maybe a drawer system, a pretty basic kitchen, just places to put things. So obviously this plug sticking out is really in the way. So what I'm going to do is move that over here to the other side, over here, and then I'm going to wire that into one of the AUX switches on the dash so that I can turn the ARB freezer and this whole auxiliary circuit on and off with one of the OEM switches. So let's get that done now. So here's the plug that I wanted to use, and this is where I wanted to put it, on this angled up piece back here in the back. Unfortunately, after prowling around and pulling that plastic out, I realized there's some structure of the Jeep under that plastic. There just isn't enough room for these receptacles, for the long part, to stick back behind the plastic. So I have a better idea. One of the things I didn't like about putting it there, and pretty much anywhere else up here on the top, was that it would be facing up, and I really don't want water pooling up in this if I leave the top off and it rains on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a temporary setup right now. Then I'm going to go back to SolidWorks and I'm going to draw up a container to house the switch panel to where it sits in a really nice spot. It's easy to install and keeps everything dry. So for now, we're going to stick this in, make sure it's nice and safe, doesn't catch on fire, that'd be bad. But it's a temporary solution, so make sure if you see this, that you watch or wait for the next video to where I show you guys what the container for this is going to look like. It's going to make install much easier. Make sure you click that bell up at the top and subscribe so you guys can see this video with the container as soon as it comes out. So for now, I'm going to stick this in with a temporary setup. The first thing I need to do is go locate the wires for the auxiliary switches. And they're in a pretty cool spot, so I'll show you guys where they are. All right, this is them right here. If you notice, I didn't move anything out of the way. They really are just that easy to get to. Good on Jeep for making that easy to get to. Now all I'll have to do is connect to those wires and then fish the new wires, then through the kick panels and out through the back. So we'll see how easy that is. Now that we found the wires under the dash, what I need to do next is look in the manual and figure out which of the wires coming out from under there is the right one to use. So I think there's two 15 amp and two 40 amp. So let's see what the manual says. The manual says we have two 40 amp circuits and two 15 amp circuits, but what it doesn't tell you is which one of the wires coming out is actually which of those switches, because I want to make sure that auxiliary 1 goes to the ARB fridge. So I need to identify that wire coming out. So what I find online are a bunch of solid wire colors, which looks to be maybe the Sahara and possibly the Sport wiring, and the Mopar accessory part that you can get that has these switches in it. But this Rubicon clearly has wires of two different colors, so it's a brown purple and I think a green purple. So what I need to do now is figure out which one of those is which. So what I'm going to do is turn on the auxiliary 1 switch and see which one of those two wires gets power. And to do that, I'm going to use a power probe. And if you guys haven't seen those before, I'll put a link down in the description for that. It's the best thing since sliced bread for any type of diagnosing of wiring issues, or they're clearly magic. So get one of those if you don't have it. All right, the Jeep is on. I'm gonna go ahead and turn on the auxiliary 1 switch. So that guy already gets power. So now we need to set the camera down and figure out which wire is which. Let's go with brown purple. Uh-oh, that's a good sign. 12.5 volts. All right, I'm gonna reach up and turn that switch off, test it again just to make sure. Brown purple is auxiliary 1. Don't stick this in your hand. All right, nothing. I'll turn it back on again. Okay, that's good. All right, so auxiliary 1 is brown purple. That means auxiliary 2 is green purple. So while I'm down here, let's go ahead and test the rest of these. Okay, so my Jeep from the factory, auxiliary 3 and 4 were both set to ignition only, so I had to turn the Jeep on, turn the ignition on to test those. So let's see if we can find auxiliary 3, which is on now. All right, auxiliary 3 is orange. Okay, good deal. Now 4 is the only one on. Okay, auxiliary 4 is blue purple. Auxiliary 4 is blue purple. The ARB freezer doesn't have a super high amp draw, but what it does have is a real AC compressor. So when that compressor kicks on, it is a pretty large amp draw, and to handle that safely, 8 gauge wire is the best way to go. All right, next thing we do is take the wire and just shove it underneath the plastic trim. So it's a pretty easy process. Make sure you have enough sticking up out front to connect to your wires, and we do. So I'm just going to feed it underneath the plastic trim panel. All right, now moving to the back seat, the next thing I have to do is continue pushing the wire under the piece of trim here. Where this one gets a little tricky is you have to pull the trim out so that you can get access to this to go under the carpet, because what we want to do is we want to run that wire right up through here so that it's nice and concealed, and then we'll come out right up here at the top in the back. So it'll come out right here where we have planned. Hello, lovely assistant.
Hi.
Okay. I'm going to be working right here, so I need you to probably sit here and hold the camera pointing down here. So now we have the wire pulled out just exactly the right length, so I'll go ahead and trim that up and stick it into the fuse panel. For the fuse panel that I'm going to use in the back, I picked up a 6-circuit ATC fuse panel from K4 Switches. This one does not need a ground, so there's no ground connections in here, but I will post the link and the part number to this below. Today for my temporary solution, I'm going to use some of this nice double-sided 3M tape. After I put some miles on this setup and figure out exactly where I want it, I'll screw this down so it's all nice and safe. Okay, here's the moment of truth. Auxiliary 1 switch is on, wire is connected. This guy should be hot. 12.6 volts, success. Now I can wire in my other circuits. I'm gonna go ahead and run a big heavy gauge ground wire down to the chassis. And it's also important to note that your ground wire needs to be just as heavy as your power wire. So this is an 8 gauge ground wire. I'm going to run it all the way down and connect it to an existing nut and bolt in the chassis down under this passenger side door seal. The ARB fridge is getting a 30 amp fuse. The USB circuit is getting a 10 amp fuse. And the battery voltage meter is getting a 5 amp fuse. Look at that. 12.6. Let's test the other ones. USB. .2. .2, good there. 12.6. It's like playing a game of Operation. Need to figure out some way to temporarily hold this down, and then we'll be good to go. So here's the final temporary solution. I was able to find a way to secure the receptacles down to the Jeep. I used some sticky back zip tie holders. So that's going to work really well for a prototype situation. And I'll put some miles on this and make sure this setup works well, and hopefully after that I'll come up with a kit that'll be available for sale and fix all these temporary issues that you guys see here with the wiring. But so now I'm going to go ahead and throw the ARB cooler back in and hit the switch a few times, and hopefully everything works well. All right, yeah, it worked. All right, inside of the switch setup for the auxiliary 1 switch, I've got it set to constant on power. So all that I have to do now to turn it off is jump up here, hit the switch. Oh, I could hear the compressor turn off, so that worked great. Super happy with that. Turn it back on. Go back there, we'll have to turn the compressor back on. It's there, it's running. Definitely a success, so I'm happy with the way that turned out. And for a prototype, it's going to work great, I believe. It's nice and secure and safe. We've got fuses everywhere, good heavy gauge wire. So I'll put some miles on that and see how that location works out, make sure everything's good there. If it is, I'll refine the product, turn it into something that's more of a bolt-in kit and has the wiring and everything built into it, fuses, directions, good product videos, that type of thing. So if you guys are interested in that, make sure you click that bell up at the top and you'll get a notification when that video comes out, and all of our other videos as well. So I really appreciate you guys taking the time to watch, and if you have any feedback or questions about why I did this or why I chose that location, please shoot me a message in the comments below and I'll get you an answer as soon as possible. So thanks again for watching American Adventure Labs. You talk. Thanks for watching the installation video and suffering through my bad lighting situation. Figured the problem out with that, and it shouldn't be an issue again. But wanted to give you guys an update. We've been on the road for about 3 weeks now, and it put close to maybe 1,000 miles on the Jeep. Had all kind of junk in the trunk, including boogie boards, mountain bike gear, grills, propane bottles, you name it. If we had used that factory plug location, it would have been terrible. The plug would have been broken by now, and it would have been just a bad situation all around. I'm real happy with how that turned out. It's really convenient to have that wired into the factory auxiliary switch. I just want to let you guys know it turned out great. I'm real happy with it. We'll be having more to come about that soon. Hopefully a good product offering that you guys can easily do the same thing in your Jeep and have all the parts ready there to install. Thanks again for watching. See you next time. sound staged at all.
He wants her Snickers.
Me!
Twix bar. Cookie. Me! And a popsicle. Thanks ARB Coolers for a great cooler so that we can always have cool ice cream on the trails.
In no way are these videos affiliated with ARB. Sorry.